Hello friends, and welcome back to another video. In today's video I am going to paint something very similar to this. Obviously this was my practice and I really liked it, so I'm gonna go ahead and paint something like this in a step-by-step kind of tutorial or paint with me video. I started with this one and I really like the yellow and the orange and the greens, but this was my first practice. Then just to give you a little bit of an overview of the practice that I did to achieve this composition and that I really liked it. So I started with this, but all the background up here, it was looking a little bit too busy, I didn't have enough space for my sky, and my house was looking a little bit too far away. I didn't like it. Then this one, it was okay, but it was getting a little bit too much, too complicated with the river or like the lake and this little fence. It was getting a little bit too complicated. Then this one, I introduced a little bit of pink into my composition and the sky to try to like give it some more background, but again, didn't quite like it as much. It was looking a little bit too busy and didn't have enough like space. So this is what I ended up with, and this is what I'm gonna go ahead and paint. So to go over the materials, this is the palette that I typically use. I'm going to use maybe a little bit of this opera pink, but maybe not. Cadmium red orange, cadmium yellow, a little bit of turquoise, and also a little bit of indigo, which I typically use these three to mix my greens. And when I want a very deep green, I use a lot of the indigo. I am probably going to use the cadmium red orange in its purest form to create these orange spots for like my autumn feel. And this opera pink maybe to create a little bit of a foreground variation on my grass. As for brushes, I am going to use a silver black velvet for everything. So mostly I am going to use the belly of the brush to create all of these background trees and textures, and the very tip of the brush I am going to use for my finer kind of details. So I'm primarily going to use just this one brush. Now also for the paper, I am going to be using Arches watercolor paper, and I am going to cut it in half. Again, all the materials will be in the description below. So let's just go ahead and get started. Okay, so I am going to start, and I'm going to keep this guy over here for reference. So the only thing that I'm going to sketch out is my little basic shape of my house, which is going to be somewhere right here. Just really easy and simple house shape. Beautiful little house shape, and I like to keep my background of my house not here at the very bottom because it looks odd, and then right just kind of midway so the house sits in the foreground. So that is all I'm going to do for the house. Maybe add a little door right here, maybe add a little window here, but 2 windows, not whatever house you want to sketch out. So I am going to start by painting my little house. So that is the first step. I'm going to use a little bit of an indigo to create just the face or the house like this. Beautiful. Now with a tiny little bit more indigo, I'm gonna create a little bit more of a shadow right here on my house because that's where my roof is. This is where the shadow of the house will be, and also right here because the roof gives it just a tiny little bit, gives it a little bit of a shadow. So once I have my house shape, now I am going to paint the roof. This is where I'm going to use maybe a little bit of my opera pink and just do a little. We will do the details of the house a little bit later, just kind of getting the shape in. Beautiful. Now, while my paint is still wet, while all of this is still very wet, I am going to start doing some of the bushes that go around the house to give it a little bit of context. So I am going to use a little bit of the cadmium yellow and the indigo to give my house a little bit of some bushes here in the foreground, and this is where it makes really nice and beautiful and helps the house kind of being in context and have, you know, all houses have little foreground bushes and it looks beautiful. Now with a little bit more of the yellow, I'm going to start playing with the foreground, where, you know, it's kind of like this, just very loose, really beautiful. I'm going to add a little bit more indigo to create a little bit more depth, to give the ground a little bit of texture. Beautiful. Now I am going to add a little bit of the opera pink with a little bit of orange to again help with some texture in the foreground. And all these colors are blending just beautifully together because they are still kind of wet. Gives it that like autumn kind of feel to it. Beautiful. So I am going to leave this like this, and I'm going to start working on the bushes up here, the trees. Okay, so I am primarily going to, I'm wetting it a little bit just to help the paint flow. So just a little bit, not a whole lot. Now I am going to use a lot of my cadmium yellow, and I'm going to start like using the belly of the brush to help it diffuse at the top, but still be very intense down here at the bottom. And I'm going to do this in various places. Beautiful. I think that's good. Now I am going to use some of my cadmium red orange, and I'm going to start giving some autumn tree vibes down here. Beautiful. A little bit here, a little bit here. Beautiful. Now I'm going to introduce all my greens. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and use this cadmium yellow and a little bit of indigo and a little bit of turquoise. Gives me a beautiful green, and I'm just going to start introducing dabs of it. And like down here, I want to maintain. Be careful when you do a green and a orange because it turns into purple. So I'm just dabbing, 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 and my primary green trees are going to be back here. So I'm just dabbing, dabbing. Beautiful. Now I am using a little bit more of my indigo to make sure that all my darker trees are back down behind the house. And a few dabs of my darker green. I like that. So we can keep it like this. I think I like this, enough space back here, and I'm gonna start adding some detail down here by my house where I had done my previous bushes. So I'm just adding a little bit more shape to them with a darker green, just to give them a little bit more shape to my bushes, and a little bit more texture to my ground. I think this is good. Now I'm going to clean my brush, and I am going to use a towel to make sure that my brush is not super wet, because I am going to start introducing details right here to my house. So now I'm going to start playing a little bit with more, like very thinly, with the shadows of the house and like the shape. So I'm just going to start kind of defining what my little house is and where it is. So the door primarily is right here. I'm going to give it a little bit more of a shadow to my door. My ground is right here. I had said that my little window is going to be right here. Another window here. And I think I want to add a little bit of texture to the front surface of my house, just as if it had like planks. Beautiful. Now I am going to add a little bit of my opera pink, and my brush is already loaded with indigo, so it's going to give me like a purple color. I'm going to do the same thing for the roof. I'm going to add a few details to make sure that I have enough texture in my tree, in my roof. Just helps it look a little bit better. Beautiful. Now I am going to let this dry a little bit more to start adding the details of my trees. Okay, so now in order for me to create all of my smaller kind of leaf details very loosely, I need this to be fairly dry, and I'm going to start adding my little details. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a dark green, and I'm just going to go ahead and in the green parts, I'm just going to start adding little dabs here and there, like this, where I have my green areas, just kind of little blobs. Not too much, because I don't want to overdo it. And I'm going to focus a little bit back here in the back of the house, and this is where my darker trees are going to be. So I'm gonna focus a little bit back here in just little blobs to focus, to give the house a little bit more of a background. Like you're framing the house basically. Beautiful. Not a whole lot, just a few dabs here and there. And again, I'm gonna come in and add a few more dabs or very dark green back here, again to help with texture. Just wiggles basically here and there. Back here. I like sometimes also to go outside of the main blob area. I think it looks very pretty. All right, I don't want to overdo this color, so I'm gonna leave it like that. Now I am going to do a little bit. Again, I'm cleaning my brush so it's not super heavy with water. And I'm gonna do the same for my orange areas where I'll have little dabs. A little bit more water. Beautiful. Now I am going to do it with the yellow color. So I'm going to try to maintain as much like a yellow as I can with a tiny little bit of green. Beautiful. I think just a little bit more here, a little bit of dabs right here and there as if they were little flowers. Beautiful. Now with the same brush and a lot of indigo, so I like to mix a little bit so it's not so much like indigo. A little bit of indigo with a tiny little bit of orange, and it creates a very deep brown color. Beautiful. Now with that color, I am going to do all of my trees. So starting from the ground, like I'm gonna do my little wobbles, my little lines. They're like the ground for my trees. So I'm gonna go ahead and start lifting up and just kind of like go like this, and I'm trying to join sometimes my little dabs that I had previously painted. I'm just gonna try to join them or not, like it really is very organic and abstract. Beautiful. So the only thing I have left, I am going to do a few little dabs of my very dark color, which is almost a black, and I'm just going to do, or like a little bit more indigo, few dabs here and there just to give it a little bit more depth and like movement. See, like it looks farther away and or farther back into the scene, like forward. A little bit more right here. Just a few dabs here and there. Beautiful. And again, using this darker color to create a little bit more of texture on my trees. I think that's it. I think it looks very pretty. The very last detail that I'm going to do, and I'm just going to use a different brush, is I am going to add a tiny little bit of cadmium yellow to my windows just to give them a little bit of light. Like there is a light inside there. Just a tiny little bit, and it looks really pretty. I think I should do the door. Maybe give it a little bit of the pink, give it a pink door. Beautiful. All right, well, this is it. I really hope you enjoyed this super quick tutorial, kind of like a step-by-step paint with me of this little autumn landscape scene. All right, I'll see you guys on the next video. Thank you so much for watching.